Violence has erupted in western Mexico after a powerful drug lord was killed in a military operation by the Mexican government. And as chaos overtakes the region, some tourists are struggling to find a way out. CBS News reporter Karen Hua is in Mexico City. So, Karen, thank you so much for joining us. What can you tell us about this Mexican operation?
Well, Adriana, good morning to you. We know this all started over the weekend after a Mexican military operation. Officials say they captured Nemesio Rubén Oseguera Cervantes. He's widely known as El Mencho, the leader of the biggest and perhaps most notoriously violent cartels in Mexico. The U.S. State Department says they're most known for trafficking the most heroin, meth, and cocaine in the entire country, and it's a group the Trump administration has deemed a foreign terrorist organization. Now, the Mexican military operation originally was just meant to capture El Mencho, but he was hurt and ultimately died while being flown here to Mexico City. After his death, we saw a lot of retaliation, a lot of violence as a result of that from cartel members. Social media videos show plumes of smoke as cars and buildings were set on fire all across Jalisco, from Puerto Vallarta on the beach town to the second largest city, Guadalajara. We also know that authorities are still working to help alleviate 250 or so roadblocks in the area. The Jalisco governor has since called a code red, which ultimately means a state of emergency.
Okay, so Karen, the other thing that sort of made headlines are the number of tourists who have been stranded, a lot of American tourists and also from other countries. What is their status?
Yeah, Vlad. So yesterday we spoke to this couple from Texas. They're traveling to Puerto Vallarta to celebrate a birthday, and they were supposed to fly back home to Dallas yesterday, Sunday. They, of course, did not do that. Listen to what they told us about their experience.
They were just like large, dark gray plumes of smoke. Unfortunately, there were no available flights to get us out of PV until Thursday. So we were rebooked on a flight out on Thursday. And then after we were rebooked, then we got the notice that our existing flight was canceled.
So it's unclear when their flight and hundreds of others are going to be back on. Unclear when many of these Americans and tourists are going to be able to go back to their home countries. Vlad, Adriana.
All right, Karen, thank you very much.
So El Mencho has been a top Mexican drug lord for years, and his cartel has a major operation, has really played a major role in the drugs flooding the U.S. Vlad, I did a story in 2019 when I was based in Chicago about how their drugs get into the hands of American dealers and Americans who are addicted to drugs. Let's play a little bit of that.
On Chicago's west side, we're out watching the morning rush for drugs.
It's with 7:15.
7:15 in the morning.
Yeah.
And there's people in the alley back there.
The seller's behind that boarded fence.
The DEA's Brian McKnight showed us what's going on in broad daylight. There's literally a line. Now everyone's coming back out.
Yeah.
See, the guy's putting on his right hand, he's putting in his pocket.
Last year in Chicago alone, almost 800 people died from drug overdoses. What percentage of drugs in Chicago do you think come from Mexico?
A significant amount, probably about 90%.
So, Vlad, 90%. Wow. Now, this was back in 2019 when I did this story, but 90%, the DEA agent there said, of the drugs in Chicago he thought came from Mexico. And they thought roughly a third came from El Mencho's cartel. So this is huge. You know, there was a $10 million bounty on his head when we did this story a few years ago. Now it was $15 million now that he's been killed. But listen to this. He lived in California for years, decades ago. Was arrested, deported back to Mexico, where he created this huge drug operation.
I would be curious to know what the numbers are today, because I suspect that even with all the resources that have been dedicated to fighting the epidemic, the scourge of drugs in this country, the number is still pretty high.
Yeah.